The South Orange County Economic Coalition is the leading business organization throughout the region. We've been the voice of businesses in South Orange County for more than 50 years, and we work diligently to promote a strong economic climate and provide updates on important issues discussed at the state, regional, and local levels. Our members include key community stakeholders, businesses large and small, as well as public agencies, all committed to building a strong business climate both regionally and within our local communities. We advocate for our businesses and members by taking positions on legislation and local initiatives that have a direct impact on our communities. We hold monthly membership meetings, meet and greet events with our federal, state, and local legislators, and provide an annual economic report for South Orange County. Educate, facilitate, advocate. We're the South Orange County Economic Coalition. Learn more at economiccoalition.com.
Good morning and thank you for joining us. My name is Steve Lamont and I serve as the chair of the South Orange County Economic Coalition, as well as the executive officer for the Building Industry Association of Orange County. I will be your moderator today. The South Orange County Economic Coalition serves as the premier voice for business throughout South Orange County. Every day our organization works diligently to promote a strong economic climate and provide current updates on issues facing our state. Today's program could not be more fitting or timely for that goal. Next month, voters throughout the country will cast their ballots for President of the United States. But here in California, voters will be faced with 12 new ballot propositions ranging from parole violations to act-based employment to increased taxes on businesses. With so much on the line, we are honored to be joined today by CEO and President of the Orange County Taxpayers Association, Carolyn Kavetchi. During today's discussion, Ms. Cavecche will be providing an overview of each proposition on the upcoming ballot, as well as her organization's official position. We have a lot of information to cover, but before we begin our discussion, I would like to remind our viewers that if you have a question during today's program, please make sure you comment in the comment box below. We will do our best to get to as many questions as we can at the end of our discussion. And now I would like to welcome Carolyn Kavetchi.
Thank you, Steve, so much. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. There is, as he said before, there's 12 ballot propositions on the ballot today, and with your mail-in ballots arriving at your homes probably in the next couple days, it's important that we figure out exactly how each of us are going to vote. So I am pleased to be here this morning to go through each of the propositions and give the opinions of OCTax as well. So I'm going to move a little quickly because there's a lot to get to, but we're going to start with Proposition 14. All right, Proposition 14 authorizes bonds to continue funding stem cells and other medical research. This goes back to Prop 71, which was passed by voters in 2004. And what that did is it established and funded something called the California Institute for Regenerative Medicine. And it issued $3 billion in bonds to finance the organization. And it also established the state right of a stem cell research here in California. What Prop 14 would do is it would authorize $5.5 billion in general obligation bonds to go to the California Institute, and it would also do some technical things like increase the members on their oversight committee, add a working group, focus on increasing access to treatments and cures. It would actually establish a training program for undergraduates and fellowships for grad students in stem cell research, treatments, and cures, as well as working on brain and nervous system diseases such as dementia, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's. So what this does, if you vote yes on this, you're going to allow the state to sell $5.5 billion in state obligation bonds to fund the grants. And just as a reminder, general obligation bonds are paid for directly out of the state's general fund budget. So there's no specific funding mechanism for this. So a yes allows the state to sell the bonds, and a no vote would not authorize the sale of any bonds going forward. So Prop 15, okay, I could take the entire hour up just talking about Prop 15. And OCTax obviously is strongly in opposition to Proposition 15, and the title is Increase Funding for Local Schools, Community Colleges, and Local Government Services by Changing Tax Assessments for Commercial and Industrial Properties. Obviously, there is no mention that this is the largest property tax increase in California history. And by the way, schools and community colleges are the very bottom of the organizations that are going to get funds when this comes through. And what Prop 15 does is it establishes a split roll property tax system in California. And what that means is it peels off commercial and industrial use properties out from underneath Proposition 13 protection. Now, the state constitution has always kept all properties together and taxed them the same. That is not under Prop 13. That is a direction from our state constitution. And what this would do is it would cause assessors throughout the state of California to reassess all commercial and tax properties at least every 3 years at full market value. This is going to be, again, the largest property tax increase in California history. The owners and the tenants of commercial properties will have nothing else to do except for pass down this tax increase to the consumers. So this is not a tax on just large corporations throughout California. This is a tax on just about every single commercial property. And I always ask people, think about every business property you go into. This last week, I took my dogs to the vet. I went and got gas for my car. I got my car washed. I went to a local nursery to buy plants. I went grocery shopping. I went out to dinner once with my husband, and I went to a happy hour with a girlfriend one evening. Every single one of the places I went would have their property tax increased astronomically every year to every 3 years. The revenue that comes in, the state of California is going to get their hands on it first. They are the first bureaucracy to come in and get their hands on the dollars. After that, the money, the counties will take their money next. And candidly, that's to pay for the implementation of Prop 13. The assessors of California have come out in opposition to this because basically implementation of this is not really going to work well for county governments. They're going to have to hire at least 1,000 new assessors. And by the way, in the state of California right now, there are 130 openings for assessors statewide. They can't fill those. Then they're going to have to implement new software equipment to be able to keep track of all of this. There are going to be appeals on every property tax increase. They're looking at a cost of $1 billion alone just to implement this, let alone what it's going to cost the county. And think of all those new employees. All of those new employees are going to go on the pension system as well. So it's going to be a drag on the taxpayers already. Then whatever money is left is going to be split 60-40. 60% to local government, 40% to schools. So schools are at the very end of this. Now you're going to be hearing a lot of commercials saying that there is a loophole in Prop 13. There is no loophole in Prop 13. Properties have always been taxed the same, again, as I said, from our state constitution. And the definition of change of ownership when properties are reassessed was not in Prop 13. It was defined by the state legislature. And if the state legislature wanted to go back and fix whatever problems they think there are under when properties are reassessed, they could have done it years ago. And in fact, our own state Senator Pat Bates from South Orange County has tried to pass a bill strengthening change of ownership definition. And guess what? She can't even get it out of committee. The goal has been to get rid of Prop 13 completely. And if they fix anything that they can use as a spin and a talking point, they're going to lose their opportunity to not only tax industry, industrial, commercial properties, they're going to go after homes and rental units next. So we are a sharp no on Prop 15. In fact, you can go to the OCTax.org website and go to our Prop 13 section, and we have an entire section as well that talks about Prop 15 in detail. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions at the end of the show. As you can tell, I am very passionately opposed to Prop 15. Prop 16 is kind of an interesting one. Back in 1996, Prop 209 passed that basically banned discrimination or preferential treatment that uses a person or group's race, sex, color, ethnicity. Affirmative action is what we banned back in 1996. Prop 16 would repeal would repeal 2009, the proposition, removing that language from our state constitution. So state governments and local governments, public universities and other public entities would be allowed to consider race and sex and color and national origin, again, just within the limits of the federal law, but they would be able to consider those. This initiative was placed on the ballot by the California State Legislature. So a yes vote would return affirmative action practices to California. If you like the way the system is now, then you're going to want to vote no on that. Prop 17, all right. Prop 17 is another interesting one. California Constitution states that in California, convicted felons are not allowed to vote until both their imprisonment and their parole time are completed. There are 19 other states in the nation that allow felons either imprisoned or on parole to vote, only 19. So what this would do is it would allow people on parole for felony convictions to vote in California. They can't be in prison, but once they're out on parole, then they would be allowed to vote in California. Again, this was placed on the ballot by the California State Legislature. So a yes vote allows convicted felons only on parole to vote. A no vote keeps the current law in place where convicted felons need to actually complete parole before they're allowed to vote. 18, voting age. All right. This allows 17-year-olds to vote in primaries or special elections if they turn 18 by the time the next general election happens. So a no vote will keep the current law in place and require that you turn 18 to vote at all times. A yes vote would allow 17-year-olds to vote in primaries or special elections if they turn 18 by the next general election. So basically, it's expanding the voter rolls for primaries or special elections. All right, 17. Oh, we already went through that one. Go back. 19. All right, this is another really interesting one. It's called the Home Protection for Seniors, Severely Disabled Families, and Victims of Wildfire or Natural Disasters Act. So right now, under Proposition 13, there are some rules on portability in when people, seniors, severely disabled, are allowed to move their Proposition 13 assessed values. So right now there are, I think, about 10 counties within California and within your own county that if you are a senior or severely disabled or a victim of a natural disaster, you're allowed to sell your home. You're allowed to do this once. You're allowed to move to a home with a lesser or equal value, and you can take your Proposition 13 assessment with you, and that's calculated into your new property tax bill. When you pass away, you are allowed to give to your children as an inheritance your home or your grandchildren if your kids are no longer with us. And they can either live in the house, use it as a second home, or use it as a rental and continue to keep your Prop 13 assessed value. What this would do is basically it would allow you to move to any county in the state of California and take your Prop 13 value with you. You're allowed to do it now from 1 to 3 times, and you are allowed to take it to a home that is not only equal or less in value, but you'll be able to take part of the assessed value to a home that is of higher value as well. And that's a good thing. The not so good thing about Prop 19 is it gets rid of the inheritance allowability if your children and or grandchildren don't want to live in your home. If they're going to use it as a second home or as a rental, then what it does is it basically says they have to have the house reassessed. So some good things about this, some bad things about this. It does change some requirements in Proposition 13. A yes vote would make the changes that I've talked about. A no vote would keep the current law in place. And the OCTax Board of Directors recommends a no vote on Prop 19. All right. This is a little bit more of a detailed one. If we remember back a few years when Governor Brown, our former governor, was there, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that we needed to reduce our state's prison population because overcrowding in prisons had resulted in cruel and unusual punishment, and it ordered the state to make some changes. So Governor Brown put into place several different changes, Proposition 47, Proposition 51, and AB 109. And I'm not going to go into details about each one of those bills or proposition, but basically what it did overarching is it changed some considerations for and made some of the crimes non-violent, non-serious. It actually changed some felonies or wobblers, which are both can be a misdemeanor or a felony, to just misdemeanors. It increased parole chances for some felons convicted of what the state defined as nonviolent crimes. And remember, all of these are what the state defined as nonviolent crimes. A lot of law enforcement and victims organizations were very, very opposed to these three measures. So what Prop 20 does is it goes in and it makes some changes to return some of those crimes to more violent felonies and wobblers. Our own district attorney, Todd Spitzer, is the co-chair of this for Southern California. It would also increase and define 51 crimes and sentence enhancements as violent to try to exclude them from parole review. So a lot of pro-law enforcement, pro-victims' rights are in favor of this. A yes vote would make these above changes and return a lot of these sentencing requirements and a lot of these crimes as more violent. A no vote will keep the results of AB 109, Prop 47, and Prop 51 in place. Prop 21. Depends on what you're thinking about rent control on this one. The title of this is it expands local government's authority to enact rent control on residential properties. So Prop 21 would replace something called the Costa-Hawkins Rental Act, which was passed in 1995. And this would allow local governments to adopt rent control on housing units, except they have a couple different exemptions for that. And under Costa-Hawkins, landlords are allowed to increase rent prices to market rates when the tenant moves out. What Prop 21 is going to do is it's going to require local governments that do end up adopting rent control, it's going to require them to allow landlords to increase rents by 15% during the first 3 years following a vacancy. So it puts a limit, it takes away the market rate on what they can do. So a yes vote would allow local governments to adopt the above rent control properties, which put requirements on landlords on what they're allowed to increase the rent to. A no vote keeps Costa-Hawkins in place. OCTax strongly recommends a no vote on Prop 21. 22. All right, AB 5 was passed in 2019. I just have to editorialize here, say it was probably one of the most anti-bills to pass the California State Legislature in quite a while. And what it did is it established this three-factor test that basically would determine if a worker was an independent contractor or an actual employee. What the state was trying to do was eliminate any independent contractors in California, causing everybody to become official, actual employees. There were so many exemptions, though, when AB 5 was passed. It was kind of to keep lobbyists employed legislature going forward. There were so many exemptions. If you had the money and the influence, you could get yourself exempt from this. What wasn't exempt were app-based transportation, Lyft, Uber, things like that. So they went out and collected signatures, and what they're looking to do is to exempt themselves from AB 5 and allow Lyft and Uber to continue to function in California. So a yes vote on this would remove app-based drivers from AB 5 enforcement and allow them to continue to operate here in California. A no vote would keep the current law as written. Excuse me. OCTax really recommends a yes vote on Prop 21. Prop 23. Okay, you probably don't remember this, but back in 2018, there was another kidney dialysis clinic bill on the ballot, and it was put in place by the SEIU, which is a labor union for healthcare workers. And basically, what's happening is SEIU basically wants to unionize. Thank you. I'm getting some water here. Basically, wants to unionize the establishment of and what's going on in kidney dialysis clinics. And so, what this does is it has been put in place by the SEIU. And they're looking to try to get this unionized. It puts a lot of different requirements on kidney dialysis clinics, and a yes vote would place these new requirements on kidney dialysis clinics, and no vote would oppose no new requirements. It's going to probably increase state and local healthcare costs if passed, likely in the tens of millions of dollars. It does puts a lot of requirements on them. It states that they can't discriminate with respect to offering or providing services. It requires physicians to be there. It requires a lot of things that people might think are really, really good. But kidney dialysis clinics are operating very well right now, and basically a lot of the people who go are afraid that this is going to increase the cost for them. Excuse me. Thank you. Okay. Prop 24. In 2018, a local real estate development out of San Francisco, bajillionaire, basically filed a consumer protection initiative for the 2018 ballot. But it was withdrawn when the California state legislature was able to pass a compromise version. It was called the California Consumer Privacy Act of 2018. And the developer really felt that it didn't go far enough, so he decided to go ahead and file this initiative, Prop 24, although he considers what the state passed a really good baseline. He's looking for additional consumer rights, and there are a whole list of the consumer rights that you'll see when you look at your ballot. The problem is it does two things also. It creates the California Privacy Protection Agency, so it actually creates an entirely new agency in California. And then the biggest problem with this is it removes the ability of the businesses to fix the violations before being penalized. So it doesn't allow businesses to actually get into place and allow agencies to fix their problem. It just is going to penalize them right off the bat. So it's going to cost the state of California about $10 million just to create the new agency, increase state costs, and potentially those in the low to $10 millions of dollars just because the Department of Justice and the state courts are going to have to be working. And that may be offset by some of their penalties, but for the most part, there's going to be a lot of problems. A yes vote is going to place these new requirements into law. A no vote keeps the current law in place. So this really depends on what you think about having a new state agency and allowing businesses to be able to fix their problems before they're penalized. And Prop 25 is about the cash bail system. So if we all remember, back in 2018, the state legislature passed a law that replaced the money bail system with a system based on public risk. And it created a risk assessment portfolio that categorized suspects as low risk, medium risk, or high risk, and it gave the judges the opportunity to determine whether there was a low risk of failing to appear in court and a low risk to public safety when they're released, or a high risk. And then they would determine whether or not that person was allowed to be released before they came to court. Both the American Bail Association and the ACLU were both opposed to SB 10, which was this law. So what this is going to do is this is going to change the system back to how we were before that, to a cash bail system. But this is a veto referendum. So you have to be, this is the one bill that you have to be careful about how you vote on this, because a yes vote would uphold the contested legislation, SB 10, and keep us in the assessment system by the judges. A no vote would repeal it and return California to a cash bail system. So if you want to go back to the way we were before and have a cash bail system, vote no. If you want to continue where we are with the contested legislation, vote yes. And with that was quick.
Thank you. So back to me. So Carolyn, we just want to thank you for that very thorough review. We're going to take a short break with a special announcement from our economic PAC chair, the famous Darcy Doan, and then we'll be right back with more from OCTax CEO Carolyn Kavetchi.
The primary purpose of EconPAC is to develop rapport between the business and political communities in South Orange County. We ensure that candidates understand what local businesses need, not only to survive, but to thrive. Working within a group like EconPAC is one way to strengthen your individual voice and to ensure that your vote counts and your opinion matters. We are proud to endorse local city council candidates who have shown themselves to be strong advocates for the business community. Our endorsements include city council candidates from Aliso Viejo, Dana Point, Laguna Beach, Laguna Hills, Laguna Niguel, Lake Forest, Mission Viejo, Rancho Santa Margarita, San Clemente, Santa Margarita Water District, and South Orange County Community College District. You can also view the complete list of our endorsed candidates on our website. Thank you for your support, and remember to vote in person or by mail anytime from October 5th through November 3rd.
All right, welcome back. If you were just now joining us, my name is Steve Lamott, your moderator for today, and I am joined today by CEO and President of the OCTax, Carolyn Kavetchi. But before we continue our discussion, I do want to remind everyone in the audience that if you have any questions for Carolyn, please make sure you comment below. We will be doing our best to get to as many questions as possible. And so with that, Carolyn, you went over a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Just a few.
Yeah.
And I feel like what is a million different questions here. I'm pretty sure this is all going to be new information that you did not cover in your presentation. So I'm going to jump right into it. Probably one of the biggest ones, Prop 15.
Yeah.
We know what some of the biggest reasons are that OCTax has opposed this. But what are some of the misconceptions of this proposition? And then maybe beyond that, we obviously know some of the bigger reasons, but your board members.
Right.
I am a board member. I represent the building industry. It's obviously going to be a huge hit to landowners. Again, what are the misconceptions, and then how is this going to affect some of your board members?
Yeah, I think there are many misconceptions. I think the biggest one that frustrates you the most is what I'm seeing on the commercials now for the yes on Prop 15. Sure. And they keep saying there's a loophole,
Which I hear a lot.
Yeah, and there isn't a loophole. There is no loophole. And again, the state constitution is what determined that properties are taxed the same. It's been in our system since the very beginning. There was never, when our state was formed, all properties always are taxed the same. That's how it goes. And if there is an ambiguity in when properties are reassessed when they're sold, again, that isn't because of Prop 13, it's because the state legislature defined when properties are going to be reassessed, and they could fix it if they wanted to, but they don't. You know, when Prop 13 passed in 1978, it was a huge hit to Sacramento and the bureaucrats up there because it walled off a source of increased funding for government, and they've never been happy since. They have been attempting to get rid of Prop 13 forever, and they feel that if they can peel off big bad business, then that's going to be a problem. That's just a first misconception. The second one is education, that this money is going to go to to our kids. Well, again, as I said, it's the last in line to receive any dollars, and there's nothing in the measure that actually says that money goes into classrooms. Nothing.
Yeah. So to add on two more, again, this is probably one of the biggest ones for us for this year, the assessors. We were talking a little bit earlier, and you kind of mentioned in your presentation, but it's going to be a little bit difficult just to even comply with this proposition to the tune of possibly millions or billions of dollars.
Billions of dollars.
And time.
Yes.
to even train assessors to be able to comply with this, which is huge and quite shocking that I don't think I've ever heard anyone say.
Yeah, the Assessors Association of the state of California has vehemently opposing this, and they say they don't know how they're going to implement it.
Exactly. Well, thank you for that. I did have one more, but I totally forgot what it was. But
okay.
maybe I'll come back to it later. Again, it's just such a big one.
I could talk about 15 for an entire hour.
So Proposition 16, if this passed, you talked about it a little bit. What types of affirmative action would be allowed? Maybe just go into a little bit more detail. I know you covered that. But what type of groups are supporting and opposing this proposition?
Well, there's a lot of debate over 16 and over 209 that passed a while ago that banned affirmative action on what the federal government allows now and what it doesn't allow. So a lot of people are saying that the federal government already doesn't allow discrimination, so there isn't really a problem with this. And the federal law actually keeps in place some requirements on education on what they can do and what they can't do. The problem is in California, those cases will go to the court system, and we all kind of never want to trust our judicial system with making determinations. But it seems to be split now. I know a lot of Asian American groups are very, very opposed to this because they see this as a direct hit on their ability to have their kids get into colleges and and all of that. And a lot of other racial type organizations are very much in support of this because they see this as hurting their ability to be able to get their kids into colleges. And really that's what it comes down to, I think, personally.
And so remind us again, a yes vote.
A yes vote would basically get rid of and bring affirmative action back into the state of California, and a no vote would keep it. You're going to be testing me on this, so I'm going to bring my notes so I remember.
I did not expect to be testing you. It's simply just because I have trouble remembering everything.
All right, yes. So a yes vote would return affirmative action, and no vote would keep it where it is.
Well, this is good. It'll be good for our viewers as well. Let's see, Prop 18. So where do you expect there to be any local impacts if Prop 18 passes? And then I'm going to go maybe a little bit further because we are talking about the right one. This is going to be the voting age, correct? And so, this was put on the ballot by the California legislature. Is this a ploy to get more voters for a certain political party?
It's interesting on this because we had a fairly robust discussion about this at our OCTax board meeting, and we had brought up some points that I had not even thought of, so it was really good for me to hear that. And this allows 17-year-olds to vote in primaries or special elections. And the interesting thing is in the initiative system, and this is what we discussed at our board meeting, is that when voters want to do initiatives, now it goes on the November ballot. If the state legislature wants to do an initiative, it can go on the primary ballot. It's March now. Who knows what it will be? It used to be June. It's March now. And that's a fascinating idea when you think about it, because the state legislature, if they have an item that they think might appeal or they can manipulate 17-year-olds to vote on it, they're going to put that initiative on the primary ballot and have a much better odds of having it win than waiting to the November ballot where it's 18 and over. So it's fascinating.
This doesn't seem like a problem that we're trying to fix. It sounds like there's a real agenda here.
Yeah, I believe, and again, that was placed on the ballot by the state legislature.
So. Okay, so down to the next one. You mentioned OCTax is officially opposing Proposition 19 to keep the law currently as it is with regards to home protection for seniors. If passed, are you expecting an exodus of older homeowners as an attempt to keep the same tax assessment?
Well, I think the good thing about 19, I will say, and we are opposed to it, but the good thing about 19 is it does allow portability for seniors, for disabled, for those in natural disasters. It allows them to go throughout the state and allows them to buy a home that's worth more, which is a good thing. So yes, I think you will see a lot more seniors being able to put their homes on the market and being able to move to, let's say, a smaller home that costs more now originally, which is why, of course, the California Association of Realtors is so much in favor of this, because I think you will see a lot more houses on the market. But the bad thing about this is, and a friend has joked, this is a hate your kids initiative, is that it gets rid of that I can leave my house to my kids and they don't have to use it as one of their primary residences. They can keep it in the family and use it as a second home as well.
So this is unfortunate because obviously I'm coming from the home building industry. We have a massive lack of supply at the moment. Something like this could possibly free up supply in larger numbers. People are obviously aging in place,
right,
and so they're not freeing up
right.
homes for the younger generation.
Existing homes, though, not new
Correct.
homes.
Correct. Resale homes,
right,
exactly.
Right.
And so there is positives here.
Yeah, there
and
is.
This is the second time we've tried it.
It is.
It's just this caveat has made it tough for a lot of tax
yes.
organizations to support it.
Very much so, because it's whacking in at Prop 13.
Correct.
It's in a lot of us, Prop 13 is just that line in the sand. Yep. The Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association is opposed to this, as well as OCTax. But in Orange County, our two realtor groups are split.
That's right.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, that's right. Well, so continuing on Prop 19, it would create a county revenue protection fund
yes.
to reimburse counties for the revenue lost related to the measure's property tax changes. How would they enforce this and implement
well,
this?
what that would be happening at Sacramento at the state level. The state finance director will be figuring out who gets what money, and then the state controller would be responsible for distributing it. But when you think about it, we're counting on Sacramento to assure we get our correct amount of dollars on this.
Okay.
I don't know. That's not a bet I would personally keep. So.
Well, thank you. So again, kind of going through these, I got a long list here.
Okay.
AB 109 has had massive impacts on public safety in California, of course, and is Prop 20 an attempt to fix some of these errors AB 109, Prop 47, Prop 57 have caused, and then are there any potential positive or negative impacts to the public if passed?
Yes, and again, law enforcement agencies, victims' rights agencies have just been appalled at what this has done. And again, you got to remember, these were passed specifically to get people out of our state prisons. So those bills were passed because the state had to do something to eliminate what the U.S. Supreme Court called overcrowding. So these bills, the propositions, were basically done specifically to take people out of prison and put them on the streets, or to put them at the county levels and have the county be responsible. So yes, law enforcement is very opposed. There are a lot of people who feel property crimes and crimes are going up because more people who should be finishing their sentencings are out on the street. So there are people who feel that definitely this will lower crime rates. It will cost more money, though. There are tens of millions of dollars at the state and local level, because those people are going to have to be in prison more. And because the U.S. Supreme Court has already ruled they don't like our system, somebody in Sacramento is going to have to finally kind of get off the chair and figure out how to handle our prison system and do it in a correct and accurate way.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you have people now, again, you have people out of jail, you have people home, you have crime rates increasing anyway, which we would assume might be just based on COVID, and obviously people are leaving cities in record numbers. Something we talked about, I believe it was 2 months ago when the sheriff was in here. And so on to the next one, Proposition 21. 2 years ago, we saw a similar proposition on rent control. Do you think the public's sentiment has changed since then? And what are some of the primary reasons, as you kind of mentioned earlier, but again, kind of maybe back to some of your board members and why we went this direction? Why are we opposing this initiative?
Right. Well, the commercials are fascinating for 21 right now. You're seeing help our firefighters, have housing. Sure. Wow. Yeah. I'll just say wow. Help our veterans have housing, and then now you've got the people who are against this, the veterans saying how dare they use those aren't even real veterans, I'm real veterans. So this is interesting. They're kind of like getting at each other on this. We're opposed to rent control at Orange County Tax for a number of reasons. We think it really causes rents to go up in other types of rental housing. It causes housing to not be built. I mean, there's just a long list of problems that rent control will actually cause. It causes problems with property tax rates. It causes just a lot of problems. So we're opposed to rent control philosophically for a number of reasons on what it would do. It really doesn't solve all the problems people think it is. If you're in a rent control, those houses or apartments don't turn over as much as the others. So, I mean, it really is a problem, and we are just philosophically opposed to it.
Okay, and then a couple things that I don't really think were mentioned, but you did kind of talk about the fact that this will be city by city.
Yes.
So we technically don't know what is in store for us in terms of what actual rent control policies may be until a city moves forward. So they could vary city by city. Right.
This does put parameters on what their policy has to do. But again, you have cities, it's going to be a patchwork throughout the state of California. Exactly. It depends on who your local government officials are. There are some cities where a majority of the councils will never pass rent control, ever. And the cities that are going to pass rent control, they're going to pass rent control anyway. So.
And another caveat of that is you're allowed to increase rent as a landlord up to 15% over the course of 3 years. And so my guess would be that many landlords would try to take advantage of that, knowing that they wouldn't be able to.
Why wouldn't you?
A lot of these landlords are business owners; it's their income as well. Obviously, it could ultimately hurt renters right away.
Right.
So, very interesting. Thank you so much. On to the next one. According to Proposition 24, businesses would no longer have a grace period to correct a breach in personal data. How would this affect small businesses who are unable to afford these fines?
I don't know. They're going to have to afford them. They're going to be fined. There's nothing they can do. Not allowing a cure before fining just is so over the top for government. I mean, the whole point of a lot of these is to cure the problem before you penalize them. If a company's not going to cure their problems, then yes, penalize them, but they need to be allowed the opportunity. So this will affect any business because I kind of go back to the people who are out there filing suit on ADA compliance and all sorts of things. This is going to be a whole nother industry is going to spread up for our attorneys who want to go out and file lawsuits.
And then maybe for attorneys, but it seems like also for state agencies, because it's going to require a new state agency to oversee the implementation.
Just what we need
and
right
enforcement. Now. So can we afford to do this right now?
No, we can't.
Probably not.
Why,
just like everything else.
Why in the world at a problem time in the state of California are we creating another state agency?
Good. Well, thank you. Okay, so on to my last question, and then I think we're going to try to take some questions from the audience. But what are your thoughts on Proposition 25? You obviously just gave them, but does it create an equitable playing field for all offenders, regardless of race, class, etc.?
This is a fascinating one. The ACLU was very opposed to a cash bail system because everybody should have the right, in their opinion, to be able to put their money forward and to be able to go out on bail while they're awaiting trial. And this eliminated that ability for somebody, and it put it in the hands of a judge, one person. And yes, there was a assessment system in place that they could rank them, but basically, if a judge decided you were at a high risk for a reoccurring crime or a high risk for flight, then he kept you in jail. You had no ability to be able to get out. And the ACLU is very opposed to that. And they want to return, they're not in favor of this specifically, but the people who want to return to this system says it gives everybody a fair shot. That's what the cash bail system, the bond bail guys are there for. OCTax didn't take a position on this, but it very much within the social justice community, there's a lot of debate over this.
Okay, well, thank you. Carolyn, for that. We really appreciate you sharing your insight and preparing us for the upcoming election. We do have some questions from the audience that I'm told, but I'm going to see here actually. Let me see if we do actually. I don't know if we have. This is just
if
our
not,
new
we can
way.
talk about 22, the app-based system too.
Okay, so no questions from the audience, but we had a strong list of questions provided. Any closing thoughts before we end today?
Basically, I think, just go back to Prop 22. The AB5 was one of the worst bills that passed the legislature, and the goal is to eventually overturn AB5. I think most pro-business, pro-taxpayer organizations in the state of California want to see AB5 go away. I usually personally tend not to like propositions that, exempt one particular thing, but if that's how you're thinking, this bill, AB5, was so egregious that any whack we can get on it is a positive thing. So think very carefully. There are not many yes votes on this ballot, but that is a yes vote for sure.
Could California lose these apps?
Oh, they will disappear.
They will vanish out of California.
Gone.
So I know someone who uses these apps a lot. I know people who drive for them. It's great supplemental income.
Very much.
So an extreme negative if this does not go in the right direction.
Very much so, yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you. That is all we have for today. And we want to thank Carolyn. I want to thank everyone again for spending time out of their day to prepare for the upcoming election. We appreciate all of your devotion to the community. I want to thank you, our viewers, for joining us as well. We'll be right back here October 30th for the next virtual event as we welcome an esteemed panel of healthcare professionals to discuss the state of COVID. I know it was a panel that we actually had the month prior to, I think, the shutdown. So it actually will be very interesting to see what they have to say. So for more information on the events, and if you're interested in becoming a member to the coalition, please visit economiccoalition.com, and we will look forward to seeing you next time. Do not forget to get out there and vote. And with that, thank you.